Hey everyone, welcome to this week's tutorial on ProRPA.com. Today, we'll be talking about some of the parameters that we can use in, alongside the work queues to make our process more efficient. And sometimes, you don't have to sort of implement really complex processes or really complex ways to accomplish something because, there are these parameters that may help you to get that done in a much faster and efficient way, right? So what we'll be talking about is like 4 of these parameters, which are pretty straightforward and simple to understand. But I want you to also remember that these are like just few of the many parameters, not just specific to actually say work queues, but also like other actions or other stages that you'll be using in your RPA program using BluePrism. But these 4 that we'll be going through with the example should give you a pretty decent idea of how the parameters, how these optional functionalities work in BluePrism. And then you can always look up for other additional capabilities and probably implement them in your programs, right? So just to give you an overview, just to give you an understanding of how these optional parameters work, we have this tutorial for today. All right. So we'll be working on top of the previous program that we have created in last 2 weeks. Which is the work queue program that is adding some student data to a queue and then iterating through that queue, adding it to a sum variable and then marking item as exception or completed, depends. It technically should be completed, but just to showcase how the item is being processed, we use this. Okay, so first that I want to talk about is defer until. So when you're adding some data to a queue, you see there is a parameter called defer until. Let's take this out. So what defer until does is, if you see, it has a data type of date time, which means it's going to accept the date time, either variable or a value, to this parameter. So what we do is, defer until means deferring a queue until this specific time has arrived. So say today is, let's say right now it's August 8th and it's like 11:58 a.m. local time, right? And I want it to run at 12:01 or something, 12:01 p.m., right? Not before that. So this is what this property can actually set. So what it will do is all the items within this that we are assigning to the queue will not be processed until this time arrives, which is 12:01, right? So why? You can imagine that the reason is because this will make the process much more I won't say robust, but it would be make it more efficient, because now you're balancing your load in increments. So imagine you have some items which are not available until 5 minutes from now. So you can set that up, and what happens is your bot will be able to simply keep those items in the queue, but it won't get them in the log state. They will appear as pending items in the queue, and all those items would be processed only and only once that specific time that you have provided in this property arrives. So I'm going to use the pre-built functions for date. I'm going to use make either make time or make date time. I can make it make date time as well. If you want to run it say 2 days from now, then you can just use make date, and whenever this date arrives, these items would be from this queue would be available for processing, right? I'm using make date time so that I have everything. So date, let's say 8 is the date, 8 is the month. I'm just making this up. It could be any date, 2019, and hours, let's say 12, and minutes, let's put it at 02. So 12:02 is when I want this. And do you have any seconds preference as well? I will put it at 00. And is it a local time? If it is a local time, put it as true, like whatever is on your system right now. Or if you want to have some like, you know, UTC time zone or something, you can just mark it as false. Paste. So you see the expression automatically got created, and once I'm validating it, it shows that the expression is valid, which means the output of this specific expression is going to be a datetime data type. It's going to be of datetime data type. Okay. And now, okay, so let me rather make it more 12:20 or something, just because I don't want to keep it like close to my current date time, because I want to show you how this property works. So what happens is, any items that are added to the queue, which is my queue, using this stage will not be processed until this specific date time, which I've provided in the property of defer until, is met, right? So if you see right now, this is what my queue looks like. This is how it looks like, and I'm simply running this. So you see it's adding data to the queue, getting next item. Is queue null? Yes, because the items are not available to be processed because the time has not been met yet. So if you see all those items, you may see them as pending, but they are not available for further processing. They cannot get into the locked state, the completed state, or the exception state, because these are not accessible until that time has arrived, right? So if you have like hundreds or thousands of data items, then you can manage your workload much more effectively by using defer until date, and you can make sure that it's like if your computer, if your compiler, if your RP program sees that we have only like let's say 20 items right now available, it will process it at a good speed, versus if it sees that there are 500 items already pending, it would somehow hog the resources, take much more time, would be a less efficient approach, right? So this is something that comes in conjunction with your workload effectiveness that you can use to mindfully process your items in the queue. Okay, I'm gonna mark these items as exception because I don't like keeping my data as in the pending state. So next I'm gonna talk about is the max attempts. So max attempts, when we created the queue, if you remember, this is the maximum attempts property, and we can set it up to any number of times you would want. So what happens is, once something is being marked, is like something, we mark something as exception when something fails, when an item couldn't process the way it was supposed to be, right? And if it fails, if it doesn't executes the way it's supposed to, then rather than just marking it as exception, you may want to attempt a few number of times before finally saying that yes, we couldn't process it, so it's an exception, right? And that's what can be accomplished using this maximum attempts property. I have provided a pretty good explanation of what it does and how it actually works, like the cloning and everything, in the blog article. So if you haven't checked that out, I would ask you to go to the description of this video and click on the link and check out the maximum attempts concept that I've discussed in my blog, right? So just set that up here and you should be okay. All right, next comes is the retry. So retry actually works pretty much in line with this maximum attempts. So what happens is retry, as you see in mark item as exception action property, or rather, in this specific action, we have an input called retry, and it's of flag type. Flag is like the Boolean data type, which is of true or false. Those are the only two values it can hold. So if retry is set to true, that means the maximum attempt would come into picture. That means it has to be true for maximum attempts for the bot to be able to retry executing an item again before calling it as a final exception, right? Versus if it is false, then make sure if it is false, then it overrides like your maximum attempts. No matter if you have put it as 1,000, it's not gonna attempt to process that specific item again because you have set explicitly the retry parameter as false. Make sense? Retry has to be true for maximum attempts to come into picture. If it is false, that's the end game. That's like you won't be able to do anything with the max attempts, no matter how many numbers you have set it up for, how many retries you want to, like how many shots you want to give an item. It won't matter, right? All right. So with this, the last one that I'm going to talk about is a simple report extraction. So in this control room, we have my queues, and I can, add any filters and stuff, like, exception reason or exception date or something. I can use all those filters. Let's say I want to see what all are completed, right? I just filter those in my queue contents panel, and all I gotta do is just right click anywhere and export the current view as report. What it will do is it will export the whole report as a document, and that you can leverage to sort of check. And this is like a manual activity, I would say, but something that you can check and confirm whether the items have been processed successfully or not, and if whichever have not, you can just either put them in the queue again or like process them whichever way you would want to. Make sense? Great. So this is it for the overall BluePrism tutorial, I would say. We are pretty much done in like 25 total blog posts. So please feel free to reach out if there are any questions or concerns. I'll be more than happy to address them. You can reach me at info@prorpa.com. You can also leave your comments, likes, feedback on the YouTube channel, on the Facebook page for ProRPA, on the blog, anywhere, and I'll be more than happy to help. Awesome. Thank you very much, guys. Looking forward to the next tutorial, which we'll be starting off soon. Thank you. Bye.